Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today we're answering a viewer question. Jim L asks, what sick and twisted person invented Hawaiian pizza? On June 8, 2017, Greek-born Canadian-bred pizza maker Sam Panopoulos died. His career slinging pies was rather unremarkable, save for one notable thing. He was the inventor of the popular yet infamous pineapple-topped Hawaiian pizza, named as such because of the brand of canned fruit he used. Loved by some and hated by others, the sweet and salty pizza is so controversial that it once triggered an argument between friendly nations. While arguments rage on both sides, the fact is that the Hawaiian pizza is actually not Hawaiian at all, but it's Canadian. And now here is the man who decided to put pineapple on top of a pizza. Sam Panopoulos left his Greek home with his two brothers in 1956 at the age of 20, bound for a new life in North America. However, on the boat ride over, they made a pit stop, one that forever changed Panopoulos' life and pizza history. Getting off the boat in Naples, Italy, Panopoulos was overwhelmed by the sights, sounds and smells of a city known for its food. But that wasn't the case with its pizza. According to the Washington Post, Panopoulos' first ever bite of pizza was something of a spaghetti-like concoction that left him disappointed in the food item. Truth be told, pizza at that point had never really been considered a delicacy in the Naples food scene. It is often claimed to have been invented in the 8th century, though this is a matter of debate as it depends on your definition of what pizza is. If you choose to loosely define pizza as flatbread with toppings strewn on it, there is evidence that the Persian army around the 5th and 6th centuries BC used their shields to cook flatbread in this way while they were out in the field. The soldiers would then cover the bread with things like cheese and dates to make a quick meal. Further, it is very likely that people have been putting various toppings like cheese on bread as long as there has been cheese and there has been bread, which is a really long time. You can see our video on the history of cheese and the history of toast for more information on that one. However, some argue that these many references to ancient forms of pizza aren't truly pizza as we think of it today. So now let's fast forward a little. Mount Vesuvius leveled Pompeii on August the 24th, 79 AD. So why is this important when we're talking about the history of pizza? Well, archaeologists excavating the site have uncovered flat cakes made of flour that were a popular staple of the diet of the inhabitants in Pompeii and nearby Neapolis. Neapolis was a Greek settlement that later became Naples. Shops were also found in Pompeii that contained equipment and tools that would be consistent with those used in pizzerias. As for pizza recipes, around this time we're actually lucky enough to have a cookbook of Marcus Gavius Apicius. It contains several recipes that instruct the cook to put various ingredients on a flat bread base. One recipe specifically calls for chicken, garlic, cheese, pepper and oil to be placed on flat bread, which is about as close as you can get to a modern pizza without the now traditional tomato sauce. The reason they lacked tomato sauce at this point was because at this point in history, tomatoes were only found in America. By the early 1500s, though, tomatoes had found their way over from the New World to Europe. The tomato did not receive a warm welcome in its new home, though. Rather, it was greeted with disdain and sometimes outright fear. There were even rumors circulated that tomatoes were poisonous. Interestingly, a similar thing happened with potatoes as well, with this tuber not becoming widely popular until some clever tricks and antics by a Frenchman who managed to convince the masses that potatoes were fine to eat. You can see our video on the history of French fries for more on that one. So this all brings us back to Naples. Now, not long after the tomato was introduced to Europe, the poor folk of Naples added the demonized tomatoes to their pizza. This adding of the tomato sauce to pizza is considered by many to be the birth of the modern pizza, and it was known as a Neapolitana pizza, which is a flatbread topped with tomato sauce and cheese. Often bought from street vendors, Professor of History at the University of Denver, Dr. Carol Helstowski, in her book Pizza, A Global History, notes pizza at the time was considered a weekday food because it was cheap and helped people save money for their Sunday macaroni. To quote, "It was a cuisine of scarcity. Whatever you had, you tossed it on. Garlic, anchovies, and other little fish bits." In the 1830s, American Samuel Morse of Morse code fame visited Naples and looked upon the pizza being sold with disgust. A species of most nauseating cake, like a piece of bread that had been taken reeking of the sewer. This sentiment about pizza seemed to be the norm for quite some time among the affluent. As to how it spread to be a popular dish among those who weren't poor, a very popular myth, of which there are a few variations, is that in 1889 King Umberto and his cousin Margherita, and also his queen, were traveling in the country in the hopes of calming the advancing tide of revolution in a newly reunited Italy. They arrived in Naples after many long nights on the road, eating the same fancy food, much of it French-inspired. Tired of overly rich dinners, the queen demanded something simpler, a commoner's meal. So she was delivered 3 pizzas by the famed pizza maker Raffaele Esposito. One of these was supposedly a new concoction of mozzarella, tomato sauce, and basil. The Queen, she loved it so much that she popularized it among the elite, with the chef himself naming that particular pizza after her, hence Pizza Margherita, and Esposito often being dubbed the father of modern pizza, or so the story goes. The truth is that pizza made in that exact way was already present going back almost a century before this supposed event. On top of that, in 1849, such a dish is noted by Emmanuel Rocco, with it stated that the mozzarella should be arrayed out in a flower shape over the sauce, which gives it an alternate potential origin to the name of this particular pizza, with Margherita meaning daisy. That said, it is always possible that the Queen really did order such a dish from Esposito. As evidence to support this event having actually occurred, a thank you letter from the Queen herself with the official royal seal is seen on display to this day at the Pizzeria Brandy, once owned by the descendants of Esposito. Esposito is also known to have received permission to display the royal seal in his shop. Unfortunately, upon closer scrutiny, Raffaele Esposito received the aforementioned permission in 1871 for a shop that sold wine rather than a pizzeria. Then there's the problems with the letter he supposedly received from the Queen in 1889. Beyond no record of such a letter being sent in the palace archives, which do still have records for many other mundane correspondence that occurred that day, including even noting the paying of a washerwoman on the day in question, the royal seal on the letter is only similar to the real deal and very clearly was stamped on, not printed, as was the case for actual royal correspondence at the time. Further, rather than official stationery normally used by the Queen, this letter had handwritten on it "House of Her Royal Majesty." Comparison between actual letters from the Queen and this one also show a difference in handwriting, general format, and signature. The smoking gun, however, is the fact that the person who wrote the letter started it off by writing, "Dear Mr. Raffaele Esposito Brandy." Raffaele Esposito never went by his wife's maiden name. Who did go by that name was Esposito's brother-in-law's sons, who took over Esposito's restaurant in 1932 and renamed it from Pizzeria of the Queen of Italy, the name Esposito had given it a decade before the supposed Queen event, to Pizzeria Brandy. After they took over the establishment, according to historian Dr. Antonio Mattozzi, they attempted in a variety of ways to connect the restaurant's history with eminent guests. Had they gone with Esposito's actual name, the connection between themselves, their restaurant, and their famed pizza-making uncle wouldn't have been clear to patrons. In any event, putting aside the cute little Queen popularization myth, in truth it would seem the popularity of various pizzas simply slowly spread from a dish of the poor to something most enjoy, all without any royal approval. Pertinent to the story at hand, pizza made its way to North America around the dawn of the 20th century, though only in a limited fashion. It wouldn't be until the 1950s that pizza would start to become widely known outside of the Italian-American community, thanks in part to certain Italian-American celebrities publicly enjoying the dish, and very notably Harry Warren and Jack Brooks's 1952 song, sung by Dean Martin on the soundtrack for the 1953 film The Caddy, That's Some More, which contained the famous line, "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's some more." And this all brings us back to Panopoulos. With his brothers, he arrived in the Ontario town of Chatham, about an hour's drive from the US and Michigan border, in 1956, where they opened a diner together. They called it The Satellite. It's still there, but under different management. What they served at this diner, well, it was rather eclectic. In an effort to distinguish their restaurant from others, Panopoulos & Co. began offering Chinese food. This was pretty foreign to North American palates at the time. They also offered things like burgers, Spanish rice with fried eggs, traditional Greek delicacies with bacon strips, and then came along pizza. As we just alluded to, and the man himself explained in an interview with the wonderful website we highly recommend you go check out, Atlas Obscura, pizza was a relatively unknown food in much of North America at the time, and particularly in Canada. According to Panopoulos, the only places nearby where people could get pizza was Windsor or Detroit, both about 50 miles from his restaurant. The pizza in Canada in those days was primitive, you know? Dough, sauce, cheese and mushroom, bacon, or pepperoni. That was it. You had no choices. You could get one of the 3 toppings, or more of them together. Again, attempting to distinguish his fare, he served customers pizza with things like Vienna sausage, rice, olives, and anchovies, just like in Naples. But it wouldn't be until 1962 when he first put pineapple on ham and a pizza and called it Hawaiian, with Panopoulos claiming he named it after the brand of canned pineapple that he had taken off the shelf. As for his inspiration here, Panopoulos noted, "Those days, nobody was mixing sweets and sours and all that. The only sweet and sour thing you would get is Chinese pork, you know, with the sweet and sour sauce. Otherwise, there was no mix." As they were already serving such Chinese food with good results, he thought they should attempt to find other sweet and sour mixes. With regards to such an experiment with pizza, he stated, "We just put it on just for the fun of it, see how it was going to taste. We were young in the business and we were doing a lot of experiments." It also helped, and perhaps partially inspired him, that it was in the 1950s and 1960s when not only was pizza beginning to come into its own in North America, but a very Americanized version of Tiki Culture was also sweeping through the region. It properly started with millions of young men returning home from the Pacific Theater after experiencing South Pacific culture for the first time. Soon, barrels of rum, girls in hula skirts, and tiki torches were a popular, entertaining form of escapism and relaxation. Of course, the North American version of Tiki Culture, then and now, bears little resemblance to the real thing, and the actual origins are very religious in nature. Stores began advertising pineapples as a way to add a tropical dash to everyday life. So it's probably no surprise that Panopoulos' Hawaiian Pizza, debuting at this time, saw his customers quite literally eat it up, though Panopoulos noted nobody liked it at first, but after that they went crazy about it. Panopoulos would ultimately sell his restaurant in 1972, and in interviews shortly before his death he lamented that he hadn't attempted to patent Hawaiian Pizza. And now for a bonus fact. It is claimed by some that famed German TV chef Clemens Wilmenrod is actually the inventor of the Hawaiian pizza, as he introduced Toast Hawaii to the world on his show in 1955. However, this seems like a bit of a stretch. Beyond the fact that it is unequivocally Panopoulos' Hawaiian pizza that popularized the dish, Toast Hawaii is considered more of an open sandwich comprising of a piece of toast topped with ham, cheese, pineapple, and a cherry on top. The sandwich is then grilled until the cheese melts. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our patrons on Patreon. If you're interested in helping us out with a small financial contribution and getting some great perks in return, please do consider heading over to patreon.com/TodayIFoundOut. And as always, thank you for watching.